Well, hello and welcome. I'm Danny Gonzalez, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be back at MODEX 2022. If you recall, we had a huge showing in 2020, and then the world shut down with COVID. It was crazy here at the show, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be back and with our whole team, and it looks like there's quite a bit of energy and excitement as people are starting to pour in as the doors are opening for this is the first day of the show, and we're excited to be here to be able to report what is going on in the industry, what the new innovations that are happening, and look at different industry trends that are happening. So certainly things that we're going to be looking at, it's no shock to anybody. Labor is a huge issue. Certainly the automation industry in the space, as it relates to material handling and looking at manufacturing, is a huge challenge. And lots of companies, right after MODEX was done in 2020, we were hearing all kinds of stories and reports that a lot of retailers and companies were moving into automative solutions. Nobody obviously had an idea of what the impact would be on labor long term, and now we've seen what is going on, and obviously a huge shift. So where automation needs were happening initially, where it was a hot part of the industry, now has just been massively gaslit. As we heard on IndustrialSage through the executive series throughout the last 2 years, we're certainly seeing that culmination here. So we're excited to be able to see the new innovations that are happening and that's going on. Supply chain being the other big topic, obviously. Anyone in this space knows that it's a big issue, and it's continuingly, it seems to be ebbing and flowing. It gets a little better, and then it gets a little worse. As we, nobody has a crystal ball to have an understanding of what's going to happen over the next several months here, but certainly that's a big player here. So we're going to go around, we're going to talk to all the different companies and see what innovations they have, get some insights from them and what they're seeing in the shape of the industry, and we'll have a great report for you on MODEX. Come along and join the ride.
Are there any challenges that you've noticed recently within the industry?
Oh yes. In fact, we joke about this, that you've got labor shortage as the #1 problem and the #2 problem.
Staffing is a problem. You'll hear that everywhere you go.
Issues with labor.
Labor.
There's been a labor shortage for a long time, but the last 2 years have really accelerated.
You can't get people, you can't keep people.
Labor shortage.
Workforce.
Labor.
Staffing. Can't find people to do the work.
Labor.
Talent.
Can't find people who want to do this.
Keeping labor. Maintaining labor.
You cannot find people.
People don't want to work in a warehouse. Labor shortage.
Labor environment. Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir, but automation has to be the answer, right?
That's the new world.
So there's processes like transportation of pallets inside a warehouse, picking processes, storage processes. Those can be very labor intensive. With today's technology, very easy to automate those processes within a warehouse distribution center. And then those people that they do have, that they can keep, then they can put those in places and to do the tasks that really can't be automated very effectively today.
I've been coming to this show since I was 16 years old. This is my 27th show. I missed a couple in college. But I come to the show for a very long time, and this trend has been going on every time. It's more technology, more supply chain, more data working itself into the material handling industry. And I just think that where we're at today, it's kind of akin to the PC revolution, where enterprise level tech all of a sudden got more accessible to the mass market.
Companies can help people do more. It might have been very narrow windows of things that they could do, and then expanded into, okay, so we can do each picking, and let's help there, and let's help them walk less. And then it's let's move pallets now, and let's move things off of conveyors and automate that process. But always around helping people do more with giving them tools to do more.
That pressure on both sides of the equation, from the changing consumer behavior as well as the staffing challenges that people are having, those pressures have just been seen in just about every industry over the last 2 years, and we thankfully have been in a very good position to be able to help people adjust to that.
You know that in the United States, in 2025, 25% of the people will go online to buy food. And you need to address it. And today you don't have enough people to do the job. And think robot will take more and more everywhere. In e-grocery, in 3PL, in fashion, in food, in footwear, everything where you will need more and more automation to address e-commerce and retail. And that will be the trend for the next 10 years.
Everybody wants not 2-day delivery, maybe 1-day delivery, and pretty soon same-day delivery. Well, if that's the case, you're going to have a lot more distribution centers closer to the customer than they are today. If you have a lot of them, they're going to have to be smaller, they're going to have to hold popular items, and you're going to have technology in those distribution centers that you can afford. I think micro-fulfillment is becoming a popular word.
The whole micro-fulfillment, it took us some time to develop a solution for that. But we have one now that we can deploy either in the back room of a store or a dark store, even in a multi-floor office environment in some place like downtown Manhattan. In addition to that, we've had to figure out how to do things in a smaller amount of space, deploy it more rapidly, and enhance our flexibility, which is things that every customer wants to have.
Even though the restrictions have come down, everything has gone down, your amount of stuff that people are buying online or picking up from store is like 10 times greater than what it was before COVID. So from an industry point of view, nobody planned for this, right? Like that's like literally, I mean, we knew it was coming, right? But we thought it's going to come in the next 10 to 20 years. This is here today. So it's just become a problem right now to be fixed, right? It's about survival for most of the retailers. And when you think about putting robots forward, it just changes, like it's not just about robots, it's about, what's the software, how do you run these operations, what are the warehouse managers, so it's changing. So to your question on how the industry or the trends are changing is having a very integrated supply chain is kind of here to stay, right? You cannot, now in today's day and time, post the pandemic, we've all experienced, if you order something online or you say, hey, I want to pick up this from store, and 2 hours later you get a notification saying, sorry, we ran out of stock, we're really sorry, right? That cannot stay, right? Like you need to be real-time connected because a brand promising something is huge. As we knew this, but it just became a staple ground, right, in the pandemic. So I think the trend forward is supply chains, information being real-time, right, is here to stay, and that's what's changing.
Yeah, everybody needs speed. We need to operate faster than we ever had to before. That's a constant pressure in addition to the labor for everyone. So we're looking at how can we leverage sensor-based technology and analytics to help speed up operations beyond the traditional way of, hey, I scan something and it tells me what to do and I move it and I scan something else. Kind of moving beyond that to the sensor-based supply chain.
The problems or the challenges that are created by labor shortage were emphasized in the pandemic. I think that a lot of our customers had a lot of uncertainty of exactly where to go. I think we all had a lot of uncertainty of how this is all going to pan out. I think in the short run, it caused a lot of changes that were improvisational, and I think in the long run, it's really shined a spotlight on the supply chain, right? And how to be more efficient there, right? I think that it's an interesting thing. We talk a lot about lean in the supply chain, and maybe we've become a little too lean, right? And so we're not resilient to disruption. So I think that there's an interesting discussion that's happening in the industry about that.
I think the growth of automation we've seen in the industry in general over the last 5 years is going to continue. If anything, it's going to ramp up. People are looking for reliable automation solutions, particularly as they move closer to consumers with how they're delivering. And so having something that can be stood up very quickly, that operates in an incredibly reliable fashion, and that saves you a lot of those areas that we mentioned earlier around being able to fulfill more orders with fewer people. All of those pressures are not going to go away. So I think the growth of automation and the need for automation within the industry is only going to increase.
This particular solution and the complementary induction smart robotic solution that we're releasing, those essentially are augmentative solutions to the labor force. They augment the labor force. They create a new way of collaboration between human and robot. Oftentimes what we have is the same human that used to do the sortation or induction job they are now supervising up to 3, 4, sometimes even 5 robots. They give them names. They enter into friendly competitions with one another, and so it's a pretty fascinating aspect to see in how, in the modern era of 21st century, human and robot collaborate.
So we've got a lot of new companies here, a lot of startup companies, a lot of companies that are really pushing the envelope of technology, like Fanuc, and I think that it's an exciting time to be in robotics. It's an exciting time to be in this warehouse space, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the show.
There's a big trend that's happening right now, and that is combinations of robotic solutions. We're actually working with Gray Orange, we're working with High Robotics, we're working with Plus One, Right Hand, Mugen. We have installations that are going live right now with AutoStore, where the AutoStore and the T-Sort are 1 inch apart. So combinations of robotic technologies is really a trend now, and it gives the customer more end-to-end automation, better overall ROI, more capacity, etc. So that's a trend that's really taking place in the last 12 months for us.
I think what we're going to see is a lot more adaptation of robotics. People kind of felt they had to get into it over the last couple of years, didn't really have a choice, and then they're like, oh, this is great, And so now that people are starting to get more comfortable with it, seeing how much support there is and how quickly you can deploy these, it's going to be a no-brainer for companies.
Supply chain and data is very powerful, but it's not an end-all be-all, and I think a lot of people are realizing that. Elon Musk talked about it with Tesla, that he ran into some problems, and I kind of equate it reminds me of Tron, right? They wanted to create, we're going to create the perfect system, right? And then, and really when it comes down to it, technology is great, but it's not an end-all be-all, and I think a lot of times the human beings are undervalued as to what they can do. They're nimble, they're flexible, and they can practice things like finesse, which technology is not really good at. So I think that the trend line that I'm seeing is that the human factors and the experience of the material handling industry is kind of getting melded into the expertise on the data and technology side, and it's really becoming a new thing. So that's a trend we'll probably see play out for many years to come, and I think it's a really good development.
We all know that data is important. Computer systems have been huge in business for 50 years. But now we have the capability of knowing all the way down to the granular level at the shop floor what is exactly happening. How soon do we need to do preventive maintenance? How much effectiveness are our systems giving us right now? How do we need to shift production or shift what we're doing in real time, not after the fact? And so what we bring is that granularity of data up through the organization, because just because you have mechanization or automation doesn't mean you have data. And see, that's the difference. I'm seeing that networks are everything, and the network isn't just within the organization, but it's actually to vendors and all through the supply chain, that having a single version of the truth happening in real time, coming through the edge and into the cloud, that's where we're going. And you can see evidences of it now. So as we're moving forward, the real big challenge is how do we do the intersection of the cyber world, real assets that are physical, and people, and you bring those together. That's the new world. We like to joke or think, hey, robots and computers are going to take over the world. Well, they're not, but they're here to stay, and we're going to work with them probably in a closer fashion than we ever have in the past.
Any thoughts on the future of the manufacturing industry?
Well, I think it's going to be increasingly automated. As you see around us, we're surrounded by robots, and I think that's going to be a trend that's going to continue. You're going to see more and more of a progression toward an eventual, as I say, lights out warehouse where it's all automation. That day will eventually come.
And I think one of the key interesting challenges that a lot of customers are faced with nowadays is once they know automation is the answer, then what, right? Because in principle, it's not so evident to automate a manual process just off the bat. I mean, it's not that simple. So you got to think through your own process. You got to make sure maybe that you even rearrange some of your flows, maybe even change a little bit of the culture in some areas of the company. So working with a supplier that has an extensive logistics and operations management expertise is really key to success, if you ask me.
People, when the first time go to automation, they're a little bit hesitate. They say, oh, I don't know exactly what. I am not sure that they will address my needs. That means I think the bridge between technology and really the needs of the customer, this bridge, this is, I think, the key of the success. And if people with change the culture and a lot of discussion, and when you show that your solution is to adapt yourself to the needs and not opposite, then people like it.
I know that I'm biased, but I know that automation is the path to the future. I think that a resounding theme that I've been hearing is, I know that I need to do automation because I have all of this, I have labor issues and shortages there. I have a lot of supply chain pressure on me. I have to do more, better, faster, cheaper all at the same time, right? So I know that these things are happening, but I just don't know where to start. So we hear that a lot. So I think that there are so many options out there, right? You walk around the floor here and there's, you can't throw a stick and not hit a robot, right? So they're everywhere. That's something that I'm hearing, is that people know that they need to get into automation, but they're just not sure where to start. And I guess I'll say to those people, that's okay. I understand that, and that's actually exactly the right reaction. And start small, do something, and do sort of the same continuous improvement cycles that you already know how to do for your analog processes. Apply that to automation, and you'll keep your risk very low, and you'll make it there.
Hey, and that's our recap for MODEX 2022. Listen, if you want to get some more deep dive insights from our exhibitors, we have their videos. You can watch the full interviews with them on their different pages. But some arching themes and things that we learned from this. One big thing for me is a big storyline is the attendance and the show rate. Right before MODEX was going to happen, several weeks before, there was a lot of trepidation, a lot of concern about what the attendance rate was going to be like. Are people going to show up? Are they going to cancel? I know the association and MODEX was super concerned about that. Exhibitors were concerned about that. And the thing that we saw was that attendance was through the roof. People were here, they were excited, they were energized. There was an electricity and emotion that you could feel on the floor. People were super excited to be able to reconnect with their colleagues that they haven't been able to see in 2 years. Be able to, in some cases, meet new coworkers who they had never met in person before because they were hired during the pandemic and they've been working remotely since then. So it was very electric. It was super exciting. Personally, I love being able to see so many familiar faces, also a lot of new faces that we had been talking through on Zoom or different executive series interviews and whatnot. So that was super duper exciting. And the turnout was great. Part of that turnout, I think, for sure, would be looking at the industry as MODEX is material handling in the supply chain space. It's no secret that supply chain has been a very big challenge. Labor is a huge issue. So when we look at automation, this was a hot topic before the pandemic happened, and certainly now it's all the rave. It's where companies are moving in droves and trying to solve a lot of these solutions where there is no labor and there's massive shortages, and trying to look to technology and automation to be able to help be a stopgap for that. It's clearly a trend that we're seeing, and it's going to continue to grow that way. And people were coming out to solve those problems. A couple of the things that I saw, some really great takeaways, some really interesting innovations that I was seeing. One of the companies I thought was really interesting, and they won, I believe, the Innovation Award for MHI and here at MODEX, and that was a company called ThruWave. We interviewed them just shortly. Great new technology, a millimeter scanning technology. It's very similar to what you might see with a body scanner at the airport, except using it for your packaging, and it's creating sort of 3D imaging there. That was very interesting, very new. Certainly, a lot of battery companies, we were seeing that from lithium ion to lead acid. The hydrogen fuel cell was interesting to me. Maybe it's been out there before, but it was very new to me in terms of the deployment on the ease of deployment with that. Another big trend that we were seeing, and I had a lot of conversations with, was really obviously with the labor piece, is training and being able to reskill, retrain labor from traditional existing roles that they may have into new things. As you work with robotics, cobots, really being able to narrow that gap, that I think is really going to be a huge trend and a huge issue as we go forward, because certainly we can deploy those technological solutions and those applications out there. However, it's really retraining that workforce to be able to actually interact with it. Certainly, partnering with academia is one part of the solution, but you have an existing workforce that's already out there. How do we help to really transfer that knowledge, equip them, and get them out into the workforce? And also invigorate them. That certainly is another issue too, as you look at labor rates, when you look at why labor and people are not working. I think companies are realizing now that we really need to be able to shape and really look at how they're going to market, how they're retaining talent. And certainly, again, bringing in automation and technology is going to help narrow that, but it's really deploying that with them, and it's also going to be helping them to put them on a career trajectory that is not just good for the business, but also good for them as labor. So that's been a really interesting trend and topics of conversation that we've had throughout here. So that is a little bit of my recap here. Look, it's been fantastic. I'm super excited. If this is anything to really forecast what 2022 is going to look like, I think we're going to see a lot more people coming out in droves on trade shows. It's exciting. We've all been trapped inside on Zoom calls, and that's not fun. You want to see people. You want to be able to go to the parties. You want to be able to see the innovations. You want to put your hands on the technology and be able to see what's out there. That doesn't happen on a Zoom call. Hey, Zoom's great, but it doesn't replace this. So hopefully we're going to see that as the trend continues this year, that more people are going to be coming out. And we're going to be having more of these experiences in person as hopefully we emerge from this pandemic, and certainly as it relates to MODEX, solving some of this labor and hopefully supply chain issues. Listen, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be covering other trade shows throughout the year, so make sure you're doing that. If you're not subscribed, you need to go to IndustrialSage.com. If you're not watching it on the website right now, subscribe because you're missing out on great content like this. Thanks for watching.